What happens when you randomly explode into a blood cloud? The human body is nothing more than a complex mass of chemical reactions, is what I would say if I was a huge dork. I believe it was Descartes who said, cogito ergo sum. Probably not how you pronounce it though. I think, therefore I am. But why do we think? Where does consciousness even come from in the first place? The reality is there are several different ideas related to this thinking, whether it is that we are simply meat suits and nothing more, our minds are maybe simply just a conduit of sorts for a larger consciousness, or that we have a soul and that is where our consciousness springs out of. But regardless of where the thinking part of humanity stems from, the reality is we are bound by the meat mechs that we pilot. Which is great when, you're in your 20s and 30s, but as time progresses, when we come to understand the weakness of our flesh, we truly do crave the certainty of steel. But as far as I know, nobody's really doing any of that as of yet. One of the largest issues with our bodies is we are bound by the continuation of these chemical reactions, and if for some reason a few of these go rogue, it really is game over for you. It doesn't really take that much either. A potassium imbalance here, a chronic B12 deficiency there, and now all of a sudden your genetic coding is unraveling. Life is pretty scary and none of us make it out alive, but arguably what's scarier is getting blood clouded. In the events of Spontaneous, as younglings sit senior year in class, a girl would just randomly explode, and not due to anything that could be seen. As everyone panics and begins running away, this begins happening more and more, but only to one class at a specific age range. So what exactly is happening internally, and could this actually happen in real life? Well, let's discuss that in today's episode covering Spontaneous. You know what's really hard? Remembering every trial service you've ever signed up for with your card. It might not sound difficult, but next thing you know, it's been 15 months and you kind of forgot about it, and you've also been paying $20 a month. Congratulations, you just spent $300 on a service you didn't even use. That's where privacy comes in. Go to privacy.com/Roanoke, that's privacy.com/Roanoke to get your $5 sign-up bonus today. Privacy has a free plan, and there are no transaction fees for domestic purchases. What is privacy? Well, being a virtual card, you can do things like, lock your card for just a single merchant, which is ideal for things like Netflix, Amazon bills, whatever, and this card also pays out only to them. You can also have the card automatically close after your first transaction, so if it's a sketchy site and you're not too sure, they cannot access any of your money after that point. The virtual card can also be used for everyday purchases as well. Basically, when you use your regular card for purchases, it's easy for things to kind of slip through and people to get access to your money. Kind of think of like gas station skimmers. Privacy eliminates that by hiding your real card details from merchants. That helps you stay safe from data breaches, because you can just pause the card also for extra protection if you see something sketchy. Along with this, privacy never sells customers' data, as revenue comes from interchange, and the support team are real humans, not robots, if there's ever an issue. There's also tools to set budgets by limiting the amount that you can spend, and you can track your spending through the mobile app. Honestly, it's a super useful tool considering all the scamming that's going on nowadays. So if you're ready to take control, then go to privacy.com/Roanoke. That is privacy, privacy.com/Roanoke to get your $5 sign-up bonus today. We kick off our story learning about math. My arch nemesis as a girl named Mara then rolls a pencil. The girl in front of her just randomly explodes. As we get information about her past, she smoked, they ran in different circles. Jed Hayes cries about it, as then one girl asks what happened to Caitlin, as she says she just randomly, I guess went supernova. That cannot be good. As the cops question everybody about what happened, the younglings are then rounded up, cleaned up, and then forced to wait. Looking real Breakfast Club quadruple the cast in here, they discuss how it happened and when they will even be let out. Really, everyone is just waiting to see if it's going to happen again, as that would actually be some pretty good information to know. One of the girls then goes to throw up. It's her. She's a sick one. And then as they sit there, Mara reports it happened again. A lot. As she is released to her parents, they hug it out as she says she's not going to school tomorrow. Getting home, nice house. Her parents ask if she's hungry or if she even wants to talk. The dad said they thought it was something else, but he's glad that she's okay. She tells them goodnight and then heads off to her room where she explodes. No. Okay, so fairly psychedelic walls. I guess this was a standard girl room because my room as a teenager had nothing on the walls, just pretty much a bed and a TV. Anyways, a random number texts her saying that they have had a crush on her for 2 years. I guess the threat of internal explosion will do that, wouldn't it? So she tells whoever it is not to send a crotch pic, as then they send a picture of Nixon. A dick pic, if you will. On stage at the school, a girl then sings about Caitlyn's passing, as over at the funeral, they are burying what only I can imagine is just soup in that coffin, as the dad then peels off the daughter's sticker. So also, fun fact, it's PSA with Roanoke time, because you know your boy has an opinion on all random nonsense. Don't put that crap on your car. Yes, you are proud of your family that you built, and that's a good thing, but you are basically just offering free information to complete strangers that you have kids. If some weirdo, follows your vehicle and learns your patterns, more so if you pick up your kids from school, then they have that much more of an ability to snatch them after school by saying that they know you and being able to identify your vehicle and provide enough information to trick them. The less random strangers know about you and your family, the better. I know it sounds paranoid, but why even offer up that information to people if they don't need to know it? Anyways, so they discuss the concept of dying as Mara discusses taking shrooms with Tess. So eating a bunch of them, she then goes over the background of her and Tess, as their plan is to just get a beach house that's millions of dollars and just smoke the Mary Jane out of a hookah for the rest of their lives. A random dude now approaches asking to join them. His name is Dylan, and he self-reports that his old man has died. Is this some sort of bad pickup line, dude? Actually, I got the same question get used on me the other day at the bar. In reality, I was asking just a legitimate question. I just needed to know if anybody knew Jenny. So he finally admits he has a crush on her. Again, people exploding would accelerate the timeline here, I reckon. He was thinking about life and what happens if he exploded too. Mara asks if he wants her to kind of go to the bathroom with her, for not reasons that you think, as then she just throws up all the mushrooms she just took. As she looks at them, there are 4 of them in total, as she says they should make out. After you puking? No shot, sister. I'm a science man myself. Except those lights were not a miracle, as it turns out. So as he continues to morph in the background, they are now outside as they keep talking and she keeps puking. He then asks her to the homecoming game as she makes a pass at him and mentions his dad dying again. Just go ahead and lay on that guilt, I guess. Very smooth. So there are also 40 of them in the background at this point, as back home, Tess essentially tells Mara not to let this become a normal thing, as now everyone is back in school on Halloween. So heading to the library, they're just sort of hanging out. You could just do that at school. Also, are we assuming teenagers are showing up to school early in the morning for the explicit purpose of talking in the library? I don't buy it. That's arguably one of the most unbelievable things about this movie so far. So getting the rundown from Dylan on when he got there, he saw Mara and has been watching her for quite a few months. Brother, sometimes you should just approach them and you should never actually admit that you were doing that. Dylan ended up overcoming his fear and talking to Mara, asking if she was okay as he took Caitlyn's backpack. So after that, Dylan got a car and confessed his feelings. Someone needs to blow up soon. It has been too long. So as they sit there watching the game, Mara admits to liking him as well. I mean, she is sitting with you, and he's usually means they like you. She's like, oh, wow, you like me too? No kidding, dude. She's hanging out with you. Why is this surprising? But as they talk, someone on the field straight up explodes. Grabbing Mara, they then run out of there as they hug it out near the bathrooms, because obviously whatever this is infectious. At this point, it became known as the Covington Curse. School at this point has been canceled, as Mara's parents don't know how long it's going to last. As outside, Dylan now approaches in a decommissioned ice cream truck. Hell yeah, brother. He just bought this thing today, and he has been saving for a college car, but considering he could explode at any moment, so it's clear, screw that, go with the milk truck. I mean, I personally would have gone with the 1969 Mustang Fastback with a 351 Cleveland engine, but hey, to each their own. Doing the smart thing, they all head to a party to celebrate the life of the guy who just exploded, seeing as anybody could explode at any moment. So let's assume for a moment that this is an infection. Why in the name of all that is holy would you gather at this party? And also, why did my voice just crack? So drinking, gallivanting, perhaps even some skylarking takes place as everyone there is saying everyone loves everyone else. Mara then grabs Dylan as she asks if he wants to go out for a walk. Dylan asks, what if it's the alcohol that makes it happening? Also, wild the parents are cool with their younglings running off to a party when they could explode. Unless you sneak out, I suppose. That's also a possibility. Of course, there is an assumed infection spreading in this area that is blood clotting people. I don't know. Me personally, I would probably keep an eye on my offspring. And also, if I was a teenager, I don't think I'd be hanging out with people. I'd be like, yeah, dude, I'm not blowing up. Mara then says she's writing a book called All the Feels as they discuss if they are drunk. Probably. Pure tequila will have that effect. So as they talk about private matters in their own life, Dylan brings up that he would dance to himself and or by himself to Bon Jovi after his old man died, and he would just do this in a barn. They then come to the conclusion that it appears the seniors are the only ones exploding. So as they start to make out, as teenagers do, everyone is cheering in the house as an explosion can be heard. They turn and look as everyone begins running once more. Entering the house, yep, another one blew up. This time another girl, as Mara and Tess are being brought in to be questioned as if they are blowing people up. Mara asks the special agent if she has any idea why this is happening, but they really don't know exactly, what the cause is. She tells them to bring her something, requesting specifically drugs, as that might be doing it. They just really don't know. Basically, protecting her under the Good Samaritan law. And what is that, I can hear you asking? Well, I'm glad you asked, because this is just good information to know in general. Check the law in your state, because most of the United States has these. I think it's like 3 that really don't. So, you want to check it. But basically, let's say you see someone overdose on something and you yourself are under these same effects or have it on you. If you call 911 in order to save that person, you are protected by law from getting in trouble for what is currently in your system, and immunity can be provided for drug-related offenses. Again, though, look into your local state law. Same applies if you're under 21 and you're drinking and one of your friends becomes unresponsive. Always remember that, because I know some of you are in college and I know some of you are not 21. I mean, hey, I did the same thing. It is what it is. But the point is that if somebody becomes unresponsive, don't be scared. Just call the cops. Get them out there, get the EMTs out there. You'll be fine. So Mara then buys everything the dealers have, but they kind of have to drive there first. The 2 dealers are leaving tomorrow, though, as they are getting out of Dodge. On their way to the stash, though, the driver then straight up explodes, as then the other girl blows up as well. Ah yes, this is becoming more rapid, and a pattern is also starting to emerge. Rapid increase in heart rate along with agitation in the sympathetic nervous system, resulting in a cascade of potential chemical reactions. Very interesting. The car then crashes, as it just so happens Dylan finds it. What are the odds? Also, how did he know he was she was even in there? Following the blood trail, he then finds Mara at the river getting the blood off, as then they hug it out once more, which, now that I'm not cracked out on decaf coffee because I quit drinking caffeine, I probably reckon that she called him. That's probably how that went down. Should have probably put that together. So Mara then goes to change as Dylan turns. What a gentleman. He asks what it was like, as then she reports, well, it sucks. In the distance, hazmat teams then grab them and separate them. Knocking them out somehow, a doctor is conducting a test on Mara when she wakes up. Having a ton of needles in her arm, Dylan has got the same thing going on and reaching out to him. Phone home style, they scream E.T. and Elliot as they're just sort of laying there that night. Dylan wakes up next as Mara asks where they even are. They have no clue, as then they move their beds closer together. Nothing but you, me, and this 12-foot brick wall you built between us. Hold up. This whole movie is actually just based on an episode of SpongeBob where he eats the concussive force detonator pie, isn't it? So Dylan asks Mara to be his girlfriend, as she says that would be fine. Ringing endorsement, Dylan then says this is their life now, a plastic world separated from one another. The Gooberment is now attempting to make a pill to keep their blood in their bodies. Of course, it's an entire meat suit issue, but good luck. They run through standard questions, as they were all 17 as well. Moving them to cots instead of maximum security plastic curtain rooms, Tess and Mara talk, as Mara says it won't happen to her. Yes, but how do you know that? The next day, as everyone is bored, either working out, practicing golfing, or playing Tekken, anyone could blow up at any moment. Dylan says maybe they just have to graduate. That's a stupid idea, but given the hormones, they go and make out some more in the bathroom or whatever this area is. We now get propaganda from the government about how they are pushing for a cure. How about we get a propaganda at what is actually happening in the human body, and you create an explosion cure based on that? Mara bluntly states how if someone from Washington is coming to tell them that they are working on it, the reality is they probably aren't. Correct. That is usually how it goes. Although with the CDC, they might be doing something. Politicians, though, just voting in more pay raises for themselves. They don't give a crap. So getting hyped, one guy then states only they care about one another, as they start yelling Quakers. In the chaos, another one randomly explodes. So emotional amping also appears to be an issue, as another one then blows up in the middle of the night. This is not ideal, as it happens many more times. As the scientists work, pills start being administered, as it is not working, and they are beginning to run out of test subjects. Finally, though, it appears they have a pill that ends up working, as all the younglings are released out into the world, being assumedly cured. Returning back home, it is now Christmas time, as Mara then heads upstairs to change. Happy to be home, Dr. Rolanda Be Cool calls the pills the snooze, as it appears to have worked and prevented many from exploding. Handing Mara a MJ vape, they all smoke a little bit. So yeah, I mean, I get that she's 17, but like opening the floodgates isn't exactly a wonderful idea. Her parents say they got to get her through graduation as Mara continues taking her pills, and they're trying to be the cool parents. Remember, cool parents don't really make great people, I guess is the best way to put it, and somebody's gonna argue that they're awesome and their parents were cool and let them do whatever they want. You should probably get, I don't know, a second opinion on that. Like, and just like, you know how like super strict parents just create sneaky teenagers, it's the same thing. It's all about balance. Maybe handing your kid a THC vape, not exactly in their best interest. So Dylan is now over there as Mara says she's got him a present. It's what you think it is, as then we jump forward as the deed is done and they like one another and explosion. No, they didn't explode. Not yet, evidently. So discussing the idea of if they are safe or not, Dylan says school has restarted and now they have to go back. Their teacher starts off with a rousing discussion of his friend stepping on a landmine. It was a brutal discussion. He says he doesn't know if everything is going to be okay, but he will help them graduate. The guy in the back, covered in non-micro braided gear, or Mr. BSL Suit Zero over here, goes to the bathroom as Mara goes to talk to Special Agent Rolanda, who takes her blood pressure. Mara then says to rename the medication, and also, why is she being tested by an FBI agent instead of like an EMT? Also, blood pressure definitely appears to be linked to this issue. So the special agent really doesn't know if it's actually over or not, but they're just gonna kind of wait and see. Over at Dylan's barn, Mara then brings him in and takes off the blindfold. It's the dancing barn room. So triggering his PTSD hardcore over his father, she then dances with them in the room as, he's not alone anymore. Now we get a barn dancing montage. We all know how these go down, and if you don't know how barn dances go down, well, you gotta go to the south to a small town called Sylvester, Georgia. They know how to party down there. Mara then says she wants to be with Dylan as he says he loves her. Ah, young love. And much like young love, it'll probably end in some ridiculous blowout. He says this summer they should probably just drive around for a while before going to school. In the ice cream truck, that thing gets like 8 miles per gallon and is probably burning a quart of oil every 100 miles. You would run out of money before hitting the state line. So the next day, Tess and Mara then talk about if you put enough monkeys in a room with a typewriter, eventually they can write Shakespeare, and it's really just a time probability thing. And getting up to leave, they're now back in school. They're getting a talk about, what the snooze button medication actually is. It's not a cure, but it's able to treat the problem. Steve is then called up to prove that it works by the doctor. Running through the tests, he then pats his head and rubs his belly as then she runs through the process during this event. People then start laughing as he explodes. With this startling event, 3 more instantly explode, with many more starting to blood bend their own bodies. Others begin blowing up all over as clearly there is a massive issue. Like, I get it, it's scary, but what is running going to do? I'm guessing that they're assuming it's a curse, but that's highly unlikely. The guy in his suit then grabs Mara to tell her something as now he explodes. Seeing this, she takes off and getting outside, she starts calming herself, looking for everyone else as Dylan then runs over to her to hug it out. Telling her he's glad that she's still there, they look at each other as then everything turns red. Well, Dylan finally exploded on her, phrasing, as then she walks along at night alone. The special agent finds her as Mara is now very unhappy. His jawbone ended up splitting open her head as she was hit. So some bones do appear to actually stay intact, which is also fairly interesting. Not sleeping that night, she then goes to take her pills, but clearly that did nothing last time, so really, what's the point? Mara's dad says Dylan's mom called, but she's not interested in talking. So having a funeral for apparently everyone, it appears as though Tess did in fact survive as Mara watches footage of her and Dylan. Yes, number one way to amplify that depression. Watch footage of your ex. This is a trap. Don't do that. So now she has taken up drinking as a result, and this is why, the cool parents, not a great way to be. It's actually a really bad way to be. Giving her dad the alcohol, she then drinks it instead. She says alcohol makes that feeling go away. For like a few hours. Also, hey dad, you might want to reach into that big bag of parenting ability, which I'm guessing you have, and maybe start parenting, because clearly, if that's being said to you, sitting there pensively and not reacting, that's not very helpful. You might want to take the alcohol away and try to talk to her. This guy, seriously, sucks. So heading outside later that night, she keeps drinking. Again, might be time to start parenting over there, guys. And heading over to Tess's house as they have a disagreement over going to school. Tess decides to get in the van and she leaves Mara behind. And now evidently Mara hates her for this. All the years of friendship, gone in an instant. running through protesters and stealing signs for some reason. She just straight up steals from other stores, as then she runs into the special agent. Throwing a bottle of alcohol to her, it hits the car, breaking the window. Her parents are now attempting to parent, which might be a little late in the game here. I know, they're just getting it coming and going. Anyways, they should have been parenting probably around the age of 13. So she says she's gonna go die in a blood explosion, as then she heads under the bed once more on her computer. The Covington Curse page shows who all has been got and who's left. Now it's just moody brooding and being a teenager. Granted, if I was about to explode, or I thought I was about to explode, I'd probably be doing the same thing. It's now prom, as Mara continues to be depressed. Outside on the swing set, Mara offers Tess some more tequila as she sends her a beach house listing. Tess says she's leaving this area tonight. She needs her life to finally start. Well, I hope something horrible doesn't happen at prom, as Tess then heads back inside with Mara drinking tequila outside. Entering the hallway, it's a total bummer of a prom. People crying, there's like 18 of them left. Spiking the drink, nobody really does anything to stop her from doing so. Again, I get it, tough times, but it's a bit bizarre how just anything goes. Mara then steals the bowl and drinks it in the corner, which now it's speech time. Mara goes up to the microphone. She says she's the curse. She says that she did the math and she's the reason all this is happening. You did the math, did you? What math? She also reports that Springsteen is good. I mean, Springsteen's not bad, Another girl then runs up saying that it was actually her fault, as everyone then starts blaming themselves for the curse. Also, Springsteen? Look, it's either work on your daddy's farm or become the biggest rock star in the world. Or just take a train 30 minutes north to New York, whichever. That joke also was shamelessly stolen from Big J, but it's so appropriate for this statement. Anyways, walking to the graveyard at this point, she then heads to Dylan's grave, as it says he will be right here. Also, this movie coming out in 2020 was wild. She then lays down there and cries as Dylan's mom approaches. Should probably be saying Dylan's mom approaches. Haven't really said that yet. So she asks, can she join her at her son's own grave, which this is depressing, as Mara then apologizes for not coming to the funeral. Mara just starts admitting to being on shrooms the first time that they hung out, as apparently he did tell his mom about this and how he held her hair while she threw up. The mom evidently, though, just thought she was in a lot of pain and not a druggie. Okay, listen, if I have a son and he's telling me about his girlfriend being on shrooms, I'm gonna be like, yeah, nah, dude. Like, do not proceed. So Mara continues to grieve, as is natural with all this crap going on, as they talk about a man being swallowed by a sinkhole, as the woman says maybe that's just life. Nobody deserves to blood cloud, but it just happens. Mara then asks what she's supposed to do, as Dylan's mom then invites her over for dinner next week. The next day, Mara's parents are up and waiting for her as she arrives looking rough. Hangovers and whatnot will do that, although she's young, so they don't really start hitting until your 30s. She apologizes, and they all just hug it out. Checking her jawbone wound, it's healing pretty nicely, and as suddenly, apparently, as it started, it stopped. After 3 months, there were no more blood clouds. The new batch of medicine appears to have actually worked correctly. Leaving her room, she has been gifted the ice cream truck, I'm assuming from Dylan's parents, and because they don't want it in her front yard. So starting up this thing that definitely wouldn't make it more than 100 miles, she stops by the school as they are planning to tear it down for some reason. 31 people ended up blood clouding out of that senior class. Younglings next to her are banging on the windows of the bus as then she heads out and begins living her life. It's not just a random sequence of events, as really bad things just happen, and sometimes, it is what it is. As her and Tess are now at a beach house, allegedly, and thus concludes spontaneous. So, you probably have several questions, as do I. First and foremost, why for the love of all that is holy was nothing ever explained? I bet that's pretty annoying, but luckily, your boy here has a bunch of crackpot pathophysiological theories on this channel, so let's discuss this infection in a few ways to set it up, what exactly is happening first, and then we can move on to what the actual infection is, because what's more alarming is, while it probably would not really be all that explosive per se, this sort of thing is really not too far outside of the realm of what could potentially happen in real life if the correct parameters are met. So let's begin where we should always begin, symptom presentation, shall we? The first thing that we see is that whatever this is produces asymptomatically at first. This means there really is nothing to speak of. The question is, why? Well, your immune system is a finely tuned powerhouse that can absolutely take you out, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's exactly perfect. Let's say you get infected with something nasty, say like HIV for instance, which is, I really hope you don't get that, but your body has to detect it first. Now, the typical onset of HIV post-infection is like within a few weeks later, you'll have flu-like symptoms. But that period just prior that you are infected, however, there's just not enough of the actual virus floating around for your body to launch a full-scale attack. Now, you may be asking, well, Roanoke, why is that? Every day, your body is inundated with viruses and bacteria, mold spores, whatever. Your body has a ton of resources, is warm, and contains all the machinery that viruses would want in order to propagate. As a result of this, you inhale, have your skin barrier pierced, eat exposed mucous membranes, really any way possible. This allows for pathogens to enter your body. Imagine if you got a fever and were down every single time you got a cut, or a few bacteria got in on some food that you ate, somebody sneezed in your eyes, which that would be annoying. You would never have survived in the wild as a result. Because of this, there is a threshold that needs to be met. Now, moving back to HIV for a moment, after these initial symptoms, the virus will then hide within your cells. This latent period can actually last anywhere from 1 to 20 years. I mean, if you look at Magic Johnson, that dude's still doing all right. And it's been way longer. And this is where you pretty much have zero symptoms. Then the immune system begins to falter, considering that HIV destroys T cells, which is integral for your body to actually, fight things. And HIV will continue to just evade the human immune system, and it can mutate into different variants. HIV is really annoying. But because of this, symptoms do not present themselves, and the person may be none the wiser despite having a previously fatal disease. We have medication, and CRISPR appears to have some possibility in curing it as well. But is any of this sounding familiar right now? Well, let's move back to the spontaneous discussion. With the asymptomatic phase at first, what is a relative unknown is how long exactly this phase is. What I find a bit strange is that this class in particular appears to be the only ones who actually ended up infected, whereas the rest of the school didn't appear to have the same issue. Therefore, we can conclude with relative certainty, given that there are no other cases to be found even within the same area, that this has to be using blood as the vector of transmission. When Caitlin was the first to explode, it's clear she at that exact moment was infected and also infected the rest of the class. Given that everyone there was exposed to at least a few drops of blood, she would essentially be patient zero. The rest of the parents really were probably not too keen on letting their offspring just hang out with the exploding class of 2020, so they were very likely kept completely separated, and I would imagine those classmates would also continue keeping their distance as well. This is not so much a curse, it's just an unknown disease progression from the looks of it. But where could it have come from? Well, to understand that, we need to figure out just exactly what is happening to the human body in order to know what the infection is, and there's actually quite a few clues in the movie itself that clearly show, apart from the explosion, what we were looking at. I want you to remember a few things about the explosions concerning what precedes at least most of them and what comes just seconds after. When we see Caitlin in her seat, she appears to be the major outlier from the rest as far as blood clotting. She was just minding her own business, quietly sitting in class when she ended up exploding. However, every other time that we see this process take place, there is always some form of chaos. When at the party, everyone was fine interacting with one another right up until they started chanting Quakers, in which case, boom, blood clouds. The driver of the van were laughing and joking about getting out of there when the guy went first, and this would have clearly stressed out his girlfriend, which then resulted in her exploding. When the guy Steve was called up to the front of the class to show how the medication worked and that they were totally fine, the doctor was looking for a specific response in his body that might make him explode, and then when he actually did explode, this caused a massive panic as everyone fled. Not great on that doctor. But they also didn't know that this was not really that great of an idea and ended up exploding, which also included Dylan. The point is, it becomes very clear that in times of what the body would consider stress, even if it's in a positive social situation, something triggers the blood cloud effect with a fair amount of regularity. We can assume then that the endocrine system to a degree has an effect on the explosion itself. What we also know is that the adults are completely immune to this infection. At no point were any of the adults afflicted. Of course, the only adult with any regularity who was around the teens when the blood clouded issue presented itself was the teacher, but clearly he's not showing any signs or symptoms. This would mean adults are immune to the infection, but teens are very clearly not. But why? This one is a bit more of a mystery, but if you really look into it, you can kind of see why this actually is the case. And I believe this infection is choosing a very specific receptor on cells in which to invade them. There is evidence to suggest that specifically teenagers have more cell receptors for hormones on their cells than adults do. This would do a few things. First, if the infection is using these receptors to enter the cell, it would allow for an infection to hide from the immune system in greater capacity, therefore not triggering the symptomatic phase. This is why nobody really ever appears to show that they are infected with no fevers, no coughing, no sneezing, nothing else. Second, given that the adults have less of these hormonal receptors, it would actually leave the hypothesized infection floating around in the body for longer, giving the body more time to become aware of its presence and subsequently deal with it by creating antibodies, phagocytosis, everything to just kind of destroy it. And this is why adults seem completely immune to the infection, whereas teenagers explode. But it's also a two-pronged method. The same receptors this infection has a high affinity for also let it know when it's time to blood cloud. There is a standard pathway for human socialization across the board. When you are really young, you care about pretty much exclusively what your parents think. When you are a teen, you care about what your peers think. And then when you get older, you only really care about what you think. You don't really, don't get me wrong, I'm 33 at this point, I care what my friends think. But at the end of the day, it's advisement. It's not, I have to do this. This is actually a very natural, and it's a natural thing, but it's also fantastic as well because, man, can you imagine caring about what everyone thinks all the time? Oh, I remember when I was like that. It was terrible. And this is why when you get on Instagram Reels, you'll see like younger people calling something cringe, right? Which is probably not even the term anymore, but to them, this is basically a death sentence to do something cringe online. And the line of thought is, how could anyone step outside of the social norms? Well, usually the person being cringe is an older person. So like, I see a lot of it with Gen Z calling millennials cringe. Yeah, millennials can be cringe because really we're just not operating, I think, with the same functionality of our brain anymore, because the things that would have killed us seeing cringe, now we could just be it because we don't really care anymore. It's a very interesting process. But Gen Z, you are correct calling it cringe. It's just, does anybody care if it's cringe? When you reach adulthood, you just don't care. And the reason is, being cringe doesn't actually kill you. Usually there's really no punishment apart from possibly being ostracized, but if you don't really care about that, then what's the problem? But to younger people, being ostracized because of how their brains are structured is like dying and has very real consequences. And this is because these hormone receptors, more specifically located in the central nervous system, force them to care about this sort of thing, which makes sense. You've got social bonding, future reproduction efforts, learning social norms. All of this is very important for your formation into an adult. So given that we see that the teens blood cloud regularly within social situations and when they are chanting or laughing, what appears to trigger this outcome is actually, I think, two things. First, oxytocin, I think it's three things really, but first, oxytocin, which is basically the love hormone, that's what helps you bond with people and pets or your favorite tree, whatever you want to bond with, I don't care, but it would appear that it needs to be there at least in great amounts within the brain. Along with this, given the chanting and hype factory effect, it would need more than just oxytocin. Adrenaline appears to play a role as well, exciting the nervous system, raising the heart rate, increasing the blood pressure, and then releasing another hormone, or at least it's not releasing it, but your body then starts releasing it, and this is known as cortisol. Cortisol is literally the stress hormone. In the immune system, cortisol is linked to a very interesting effect, which, given how the cells are responding, may hint at what is actually happening. Cortisol has many uses, but if it's in your body in large amounts, it can cause cells to quite literally change their gene expression. But what I want to focus in on is how it can induce cells to prematurely enter apoptosis and can trigger a process of catabolism. Catabolism is the process in which your body is broken down rather than, I think it's anabolism, if I remember correctly, where it's built up. Yeah, anabolic steroids and stuff like that build you. Catabolic tears everything down. That's how you lose your muscle. So if we take these three hormones and apply it to situations that we are seeing, we can begin to understand that these hormone triggers need to be present in greater amounts, which an adult would simply not be capable of anymore. When Mara goes home to her parents, oxytocin may be released when she sees them, but cortisol and adrenaline probably are not. Even when disagreeing with them, it really never rises to the level that it needs to be because her parents are fairly laid back. Some would claim possibly too laid back. It's me, I claim that. But when people are chanting, oxytocin is high, adrenaline is high, and cortisol follows soon after as the body is stressed, leading to people to explode. And when we see them running from the room after, they took their pills, many continue exploding as they are in a social situation. They were just laughing and then someone explodes. Because of this, adrenaline is released and now they are stressed because people, are popping like cherry tomatoes. It's all there, black and white, plain as day, crystal clear, and this is triggered by the endocrine system. But then, what exactly is happening to the body to even allow for this in the first place? So quite a few things actually must happen inside of the body within just a few seconds. Likely what is never said by anyone who is actually going through this process, as they don't really have time to relay it, is that their heart rate would probably rise rapidly. for some reason, adrenaline is triggered inside the aforementioned parameters. Now you might be wondering, okay, well, why would your heart rate just randomly increase? Something that I personally experienced when I was, I think between the ages of probably about 14 to 22, I just randomly got panic attacks. No rhyme or reason. I would just be sitting there and they would always start the same. Bead of sweat roll down the side of my head. I'm like, I wonder if everybody sees me sweating for absolutely no reason. And then I would just start panicking. Heart rate skyrocketed, everything else. And then one day, it just stopped. And I have not had a panic attack since. It's very, very strange. But the point is, their heart rate probably just randomly started to rise. That happens when you're exposed to that many hormones. So as the receptors come into contact with this hormone, the pathogen within their cell would begin the process of catabolism. This would actually begin breaking down the cellular function, which in turn would likely lead to cellular apoptosis. As the cells lysed in this area, this would then spill their contents all over the place, essentially. Now, I want you to remember that this is all happening within just a few seconds. This would indicate that there is absolutely a threshold that needs to be met, triggering this rapid reaction. As the process continues, all roughly 30 to 40 trillion cells would begin entering apoptosis, but some would just not be as exposed, I suppose. For instance, the skeletal system appears to hang around for just a few seconds longer, which is likely by design, which we'll discuss here in a moment. So as the epithelial, muscular, and nervous system continue to liquefy, gas would be built up rapidly through several chemical reactions taking place, leading to specifically a buildup of hydrogen in the body, as well as many other gases, such as methane and hydrogen sulfide. As these gases rapidly build, possibly before the skin has even had a chance to liquefy to release this gas, the nervous system may begin to rapidly fire because it is experiencing a lot of issues. This electrical component of the body may be enough to ignite some of the hydrogen that has now built up to dangerous levels. It is likely at this point, though, that the person is really no longer consciously present and they've just completely left the building. So as the person spontaneously ruptures due to this internal gas buildup and subsequent igniting, it wouldn't be enough to actually burn clothes or damage the surrounding area, but it most definitely is strong enough to cause a blast effect, throwing genetic sludge everywhere, and with that, the hypothesized infection. And this is also very clearly by design, as it shows the hand of what is happening, highlighting this as a specific infection. It's rabies. No, it's not rabies. What we actually see is something that has been designed and does not exist naturally in nature, although its base form, its wild type, existed in nature. The vector by which it spread is blood. We can assume then that this is very likely a form of virus. This virus infected Caitlin at some point as she became patient zero. It is unknown how she contracted it, but what is known is the virus would propagate within her body, inducing zero symptoms until a threshold was met. What's disturbing about this is it shows that this is actually an engineered virus, not a naturally occurring one. It is simply an altered form, which I personally believe it to be an altered form of Ebola. Ebola is a rapidly dividing virus that infects cells and actually causes liquefaction of them. This in turn parallels what we are seeing with this specific virus. The reason I think this was engineered is essentially this virus has the gain of function to react to a certain, amount of hormones in the body, which are only present at a certain age range given the receptors on the cell surface. So not only would this attack a country's younger generation, completely crippling them for a few decades, but it could also potentially keep spreading to other younglings and end up eliminating that country altogether, probably within 50 to 60 years. The virus quite literally waits until the hormones are present in large amounts, signaling to that person, or at least signaling to the virus, that it is in a broad social situation with many people around them, and given it's a bloodborne illness, it would need to infect that way, which is exactly what it does when it bursts the person. But the process is a bit more insidious as well, because it doesn't just get blood on people. Mara was actually hit with a jawbone from Dylan after he blew up, which had enough force to cause an injury to her head. This virus does eventually cause the breakdown of the bone due to the lysing, as seen with the guy who was wearing that armor in class. That essentially, remember his ribcage was kind of melting down into nothing? But first, the virus uses the naturally occurring bone structures in the body, which are having their connective tissues also melted down, to be blasted outwards, causing injury to people at random, allowing this virus entry into their blood where the process can continue once more. It may be in Caitlin's initial explosion that Mara somehow, by pure luck, didn't get hit by the bone and infected. Many others may not have been hit by bones, but they would actually just get the blood in their eyes, mouth, nose, cuts they may have already had, wherever there was a breach in the skin. Even some something as simple as a popped pimple, which, given they are teenagers, would be very likely prevalent. The medication at first appears to maybe have attacked the cortisol issue by blocking it, but adrenaline could overcome the medication. So at first, they were okay, but as time persisted, they would still have the infection build up, which in turn causes the mass blood cloud all at once, including Dylan. It is highly likely that Mara was infected at this point, but she didn't have any symptoms like anyone else. Well, I mean, like everyone else, I guess, because it just, like, enough time hadn't passed yet. She was not infected by Caitlin because, remember, she had her head down and didn't appear to get any in her eyes or mouth. She may have just gotten really lucky in the car as well and got it washed off before it became an issue. But given the doctors were able to get the medication right, I believe if it's like a hormone blocker of sorts, preventing the virus from reaching that threshold and blood clotting her, this would be the most probable outcome of what they were trying to create. Very likely, she will be on that medication for the rest of her life, as she mentions, because given the virus's ability to exist within the body without the immune system being aware, this could mean it's also now genetic. Of course, the question remains, can she still infect others with her blood later, like during birth, as mentioned, or because she's now in adulthood, does it just become a non-issue? I'm inclined to believe it would just be a continuous latent infection that no longer presents itself, as the right parameters can never really be met, at least in her, to this degree ever again. But there's still the issue of it mutating, and where did it come from, and do other bodily fluids potentially pass it along? That remains to be seen. Hopefully they come out with Spontaneous 2, Adulthood Blood Cloud Boogaloo, and we'll know. But this, in my mind, is a clear, bioengineered form of Ebola. The liquefaction of the cell, buildup of gases, and choice to only spread in social situations shows it's not a curse, but an infection that is poorly understood. Not to mention, using actual medications to control the infection to prevent the horrific outcome that would follow shows its bodily functions being altered by something internal. Now the question becomes, how do we find who made this, and why did only Caitlin get infected at first? Time to do a background check on her parents and figure out who they are in cahoots with, but that's just my line of thought though. But anyhow, I want to hear what you guys think. Do you think this is natural or created? Let me know down in the comments. I'll drop my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, and channel links in the description. Speaking of patrons, I'd like to thank mine real quick. At the Astronaut tier, we have Bananas Are Epic. Thank you, my man. Next up at the Astrophysicist tier, we have Death's Dancer. Thank you as well, bro. And at the Scientist tier, we have Dakota23, Frank Shaftcrank, I Actually Love Electric Cars, and the Anglerfish. The Anglerfish is a lie. Invictus Echo, Metric System, Official Texan, and Stutz. And the rest of my patrons, I do appreciate y'all's support as well. The channel literally cannot run without you guys, so I do thank you. But alright, that's going to do it for me. I hope everyone enjoyed, and we'll see y'all in the next one.